She's responsible for his appearance here tonight. I'm happy to welcome Adonal to the library. Just a brief intro, and we'll get into some more of that later, but Adonal was born in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and moved to the U.S. when he was 15 years old. He played collegiate basketball at Colgate, and where he graduated magna cum laude in history. In 1997, he was the 8th overall pick in the first round of the NBA draft. He played 13 years, 10 with the Golden State Warriors. In 2001, he founded the Democracy Matters, which we'll talk about, a nonprofit student political organization dedicated to reduce the influence of money in elections and politics. He has many other advocacy issues that we'll talk about. He's also the author of many books, including The Athlete CEO and a few others for sale outside. So, without further ado, please welcome Adonal Foyle.
Give us a minute to put these things on. Over here. Testing. All right.
Hello.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plane. Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming to join us tonight. It's really an honor and a privilege. So we have lots to talk about. But first, the athlete CEO. Well, actually, let's back up. I don't know what your first book was or why you decided to write or what was the inspiration. So maybe you can just...
Hi guys, how's everybody doing? Thank you all so very much for coming out. So the first book, I retired, I think it was 2010. So I was in Orlando and I was finishing up my tenure, and I had just had a significant knee injury, one of 19, and I was like, you know what, it's time to hang it up. And but I was on my last trip, I was in the plane, and there was a story in the Sports Illustrated about Terrell Owens going broke and having significant financial issues. And I was so upset, I walked, I was in the balcony playing with some of the reporters. I walked back to the front and I took like 3 or 4 of the rookies and I said, all right, we need to have a financial lesson 101. So I took them and I brought my financial team down from Orlando and I sat with them and said, okay, here is the situation. How much money are you spending? You know, how are you saving your money? And you know, I had this conversation with them. It was 4 guys, and I was like, you know, I did my civic duty. Now it's time for me to retire. So I went to my GM and I said, I'm retiring. It was really great. And he said, no, you're not. And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm running, going back in the island. There is a tree that I'm going to lie under for the next 10 years. And he said, no, you're not. I was like, what do you mean, no, I'm not? He's like, you're going to come work for me? I was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to retire. so after having this conversation with him for a while, I became the director of player development for the Orlando Magic. And my first day at the job, there was a young man, I'm not going to say his name, but he came in and I took him to the bank. He didn't have a checking, savings account, anything. So I walked him over to the bank, I introduced him to the banker, and I created a savings account, a checking account, and created a direct deposit for him. And I came back home, back to the office, and I'm very excited. I was like, oh, this is great. This is easier than I thought. And the next day, he bought a car. We put in $5,000 in his account, and he bought a car for $40,000. And I was so depressed, and I was like, okay, how do you have a conversation about a young person that is just coming into wealth? Where does the conversation begin? How do you do it? So I started writing on a yellow pad some of the questions and some of the things that I would talk to him about. and I sent it to one of my friends, and she's like, keep writing. And that became Winning the Money Game, which was my first book.
Okay. All right. I was wondering if there was a specific moment
Yeah.
of who, without mentioning names,
Yeah.
and you mentioned it anyway, who was the inspiration to do this, but cool. The Athlete CEO, you talk about your matrices,
Mm-hmm.
matrix, personal matrix, financial matrix, etc. How did that formulate in your head?
So after the Winning the Money Game, we will kind of identifying the problem and saying, you know, here are all these guys who are experiencing financial difficulties, and here are some of the problems that you know that comes with early wealth and young people coming into wealth. And so I wanted to kind of take a step back and say, okay, if it's not good enough to just identify the problem, the question is, how can you provide solutions around the problem? So I wanted to kind of start talking to guys about what I believe to be one of the major things in professional sports is the apathy when it comes to being really involved. But it's also this fear, because when you have a lot of young men who haven't been around money for a very long time, there is the inherent fear that comes with that. When you have it, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to handle the stresses that come with it. And I wanted to really go at that problem specifically. So you come into the league, you know, if you start thinking of yourself as like a CEO of a company, then you become more reflective. It's not about you so much as it is about understanding the position that you're in and really taking a step back and saying, how could I, you know, in a more controlled way, look at the things that I care about and how I approach my career. You have to start thinking of yourself as a small business. You have to start thinking of yourself as a CEO of a small business. And I think when you start doing that, you start removing yourself and start thinking it just in terms of me, but like, what kind of impact you want to have? What kind of life do you want to have after you schooled? How do you want to engage with your family? That becomes more of a purposeful discussion rather than a fallback position. So one of the things that happens a lot with athletes is like how to manage their entourage and the people in their life becomes almost driven by guilt and driven by this survival guilt. I made it, I get out of the ghetto, and like everybody else, I have to help them because I'm the one who got out. So they have not began to start thinking about those kind of things. So it's hard to start thinking about how you're going to save when you haven't started dealing with the sociological issues, psychological issues.
Yeah, it's pretty harsh in the book, I think, you know, but you know, being very specific and blunt. No, you got to be able to say no and set limits, not just with your friends, but with your family.
Right, but I think that one of the things that I did when I first got into the league, and I do admit that it was a harsh thing to do. So I called my family up and I had a meeting, and I said to them, "He's like, you're not getting anything." In retrospect, it was harsh.
No expectations.
Right, but I wanted to have the conversation and an equal playing field. Right, I knew that there was elements of guilt there. I knew that I was the one that made it. I knew all those things was going on in my head. So the only way I can have the conversation is to say, I don't owe you anything. And that's our starting point. Now, having said that, I would like to help. And then it becomes a question of the areas that I wanted to help in was very specific. I am not going to live your life for you. But if you're interested in getting a career, I will help do that. So it was having that initial conversation that will set the terms of engagement for everything else that happened in my career. And as hard as it was to do that, you know, it was very helpful, I think, later on in my career, because I can always go back to that. Is that my job is to help you to figure out where you want to go, is not to live your life for you.
You can always give more, but you can't go back now. Once you started. Yeah. Interesting. So, among the athletes that you advised over the years, what's the reception to the message? And do they just go, "Oh, you're just some old retired guy, and you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm going to buy a car for everybody I know and a house for, you know."
Well, that's, I wish I could say that a lot of those things will still happen, but it does. But when I go in and talk to a player, I tend to be a contrarian. So usually the thing that where they expect me to go when you're having a financial conversation, I usually always start the conversation in sociology and psychology. So I never started in financial. Because most of the things that athletes get into trouble with is sociological or psychological. And what I mean by that is that, you know, how you choose to bring a child into the world is one of the most significant expenses an athlete will probably have to endure. Because in the NBA right now, child support range from anywhere between $5,000 to $80,000 a month for 18 years. So you can talk a lot about financial concerns, but before you even get to that, to how much money you're able to save, you got to start having a conversation about, you know, we got to talk about some other things first. So it always seems to me that and so that's one. So if you think that is like one of the biggest problems, you know how you feel about your whips or your cars. Usually that's another area that they spend a lot of money in. And then the family. And the family become a very large expense. You want to buy your mom a house, but there's nothing wrong with that. You want to buy your sister a house, but you have to start really thinking about, are those decisions driven by financial, strategic decision, or are they driven by guilt? Are they driven by some other mechanism? So you have to get to that. So the thing I asked them when I first meet with them, I said, so how much did you spend on coffee last month? And inevitably they would look at me like I am just let off a lunatic out of the asylum. And then I would say, well, okay, let's do one easier. How much did you spend on clothes last month? And you know, and what I try to get them to think about is that it's impossible to start talking about savings if you don't know what you're spending. And inevitably, none of them know the extent of their financial liabilities. And you cannot begin to have a honest conversation until you really are able to put those things in line.
And yet, if one were to add up all the people in your matrices, you employ a small army, or did when you were playing. I don't know how many are still in your arsenal, but lots and lots of advisors and people that take care of you in various ways.
Right, and I think that's the distinction, right? So the distinction is an entourage by definition. If you're a small business, the entourage is not an inherently bad word. I think that the question that most athletes have to ask is like, how is that entourage being of service to me and being of service to expanding my brand and expanding the quality of life of people around me? So, for example, you could hire one of your friends to wash your car or to just be a boy in a lot of different areas. Or you can take that same friend and say, I want you to go back to school and get an MBA degree, right? So the question becomes is that you have to start assigning value beyond the mundane stuff that you have your friends doing and consider that work. Because you have to ask yourself, you know, how do you then transition out of the business and create a quality of life if it's a person you care about beyond you taking care of it? I mean, is that person going to find a job washing somebody else's car? Well, if you want to do that and you're serious about it, maybe you should start a detailing company and send them back to school to get the requisite skills to do that. So what I wanted to do was to make a distinction that when it comes to the preservation of your body, preservation of your circle, that there is value in having people, whether you call them entourage or whether you call them business people, that there is a legitimate role for a lot of people in that space, because there is no way that a player that is 21 and 19 years old walking into a $100 million contract or a $50 million contract is equipped to handle it. I mean, I was in college when I went to 1997. I had a robust $150 in my checking account, and you know, we had to do movies, dinner, you know, 25 cents gas when necessary to go to the movies. You know, so you're managing that. And then in June, I get drafted 8 overall, and you know, so I'm thinking, okay, you know, I'm rich, right? You know, and then I signed with the Warriors in, you know, July 1st, And I was like, okay, so give me the money. And they were like, yeah, well, about that, you don't really get paid until November 15th. And I'm like, what do you mean November 15th? I have $150 in my checking account. So I turned around and I was like, my step-parents and professors, I told you, I was like, so, you know, how you feel about a loan? And, you know, my dad is an economist, and in true to form, he was like, so what are we talking about? 19 to 30%, you know, return on investment, you know, for 2 months. So we started laughing about it, but it's, I mean, most players get into financial trouble that first 3 months because you are drafted, and between being drafted and when you start playing, you know, an agent will lend a player money and probably at 85%. There is no other alternative. So you can't go just walk down the street and get a loan. So it's like, so by the time you even get your first paycheck, you're already in debt. So
you don't think the 8th overall pick could walk into Wells Fargo and get a loan based on that?
Well, you see, I had also the misfortune of breaking my foot before I signed my contract. So, which was not the smartest decision. I went to the Jersey Shore League to play. And they were like, well, you know, you have to do surgery, so we'll see when you get out. so didn't get that contract in my hand. But usually, you know, most of the guys, they have no credit history. They have no relationship with the bank. I mean, you know, it doesn't really matter so much who you are. You can't walk into a bank with nothing and get money. I mean, no, probably, but back then you couldn't.
So we've talked a little bit about the financial matrix. I was impressed with how many people actually worked on your physical person.
Yeah. Well,
that seems like a key. Obviously, you know, you are an athlete. Your body is your deal.
Well, you know, the thing about professional sports that has evolved, I mean, it's worse today. So when I got into the league is that I remember I didn't know, I literally tried to stretch one time and I was trying to touch my toe. And I got to my knees and my coach, Clifford Ray, he just looks at me and he's like, you cannot touch your toes? You know, and I'm like, it's fall, you know. It's like, and all the way down. And he started, he introduced me to yoga, and he introduced me to stretching because I was getting hurt all the time. And he was like, if you're not stretched out, you know, your body's not ready to take on the demands of Shaquille O'Neal and Hakeem Olajuwon and all the other people who are going to run you over 100 times. You got to be able to take the beating and recruit. So he started stretching, and we would stretch before every game, and you know, to the point where I could literally get down the floor and touch the floor of my head. And I think, you know, in many ways, I met him very late in my career, and that extended my career very greatly, I think, about a few years. So what I learned right away is that the machine, to get the machine going, which is your body, that it required a lot more than just showing up, you know. So it's the ice, it's the steam, it's the massage, it's the chiropractic, it's the performance therapy, it's the therapist that is going to put you back together when you're hurt, it's the doctors, it's the, you know, it's the cryo chamber. I mean, there's nutrition. So there's so many elements that is now natural for guys today. But when I was in the league, it was emerging, so there wasn't any consensus. You know, somebody traveled with you in the summer, so you know we could take 3 months off in the summer. You can't do that anymore in the NBA. There's no 3 months ever. So you literally have to be training, but you can't train at 100%. So you now have to have somebody traveling you because they have to be able to take you up for the season, and then after the season drop you down, but not all the way down to bottom, just enough where you can then you know, speed it up again. Because if you lose too much, that coming back up, you can get injured, and you may never get back in time for the season. And the season starts so quickly, and you could be out of the playoff in the first month of the season. So now it's like everybody has to always be, as an athlete, you have to be at the edge, the cutting edge of creativity and medicine and really holistic treatment.
Who were your early influences in terms of basketball?
I didn't come to basketball until very, very late in my life. So I started playing at 15, and so when I first came to the United States, I'll tell you a little bit about how I picked the number 31. The only player I've ever seen or had seen a picture of was Magic Johnson. And so when I came to Cardinal O'Hara for high school, I was like, they asked me, like, what number you want? I'm like, 32. Well, fortunately, I was in 10th grade, and the seniors wanted 32, so the seniors got 32. 31 was the last number left, and the ground, and that's the number they gave me. And I took that number, and I weighed that number all through my career. My first influence in terms of basketball, I will have to say, was first Magic, just because that's what my idea and knowledge of basketball was. And then, as I become more involved in basketball, I think I started looking at not as players as role models so much as really stealing their most essential qualities. So I love Charles Barkley because of the way he rebounded. I like Hakeem Olajuwon because of his footwork. You know, I love Patrick Ewing because he had that beautiful one-handed shot. And you know, and I love Tim Duncan because of his bang shot. And you know, so as you start being able to start strategically stealing things from each other and stealing the best quality from each player that you really like, and not necessarily the whole person, but just start taking pieces and trying to form your game. So to me, the way I saw my initial influences was really just about the best quality of a player, and really trying to add that to my game, to my definition of my game.
You mentioned the big man camp in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them actually. One was Pete Newell. Is there any camp like that now? I mean, where coaches can send a guy in the off season to learn footwork as a 7-footer or thereabouts?
Well, you have to probably want 7-footers in the league now. I'm not sure that's a thing. I think the expectation of big men has evolved, devolved. Because I think that there's still a path and there's a place for big men in the league, but the way that they're being used is more like setting screens, dive into the basket, or just becoming three-point shooters. I always like a more even blend of that. Like, so before, like, when you have a player, I want that player to always look for comparative advantage. Like, when we played games back in the day, and I sound like an old person when I do this, is that what you do is that you try to figure out where you had an advantage. So to me, you had a 7-footer at the three-point line, or you have a 7-footer in the block with a 5'10" person behind them, and they don't even throw the ball. Because that's not a priority, because the priority of the way the game is played is that if you shoot 2 points, then you're losing. So I always thought if you're dunking the ball, then you're intimidating the other team, and, you know, but it's like the game has shifted in terms of the expectation. So if there is no expectation that that guy could score 10 points and needs to score 10 points as a big man, then what is the incentive for people to be doing camps for that guy to develop? So you look at players that the jump hook is gone, the sky hook is gone, you're not seeing any of those elements in the game because it is not appreciated in the game. So to create a market for skill, when Pete Newell, when I was going to Pete Newell camp and I was going to Robert Parrish and Clifford Ray's camp, I mean, there was, big man was an essential component of the team. Now it's almost like if you can get a rebound and block a shot and maybe do a dunk, we don't really need you to score and block as much anymore. But if you can shoot a 3, then we'll pull it over.
Although those are 90% shots, dunks, and 3-point.
I like dunks.
42%.
I like layups. I mean, after shooting, 0 for 27, I showed Houston love layups too.
You wrote a series of children's books based on Too Tall Foyle.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us how that came about and what the goal is of those?
So one of my foundation, I went back to the Caribbean almost habitually every summer, and we do a camp for kids, really using basketball to talk to kids about the importance of staying in school and the importance of academics and stuff like that. And one of the elements of the camp, so we'll do like a rebounding station, a dribbling station, pick a book station, health education station. So you will go around in this camp, and it really wasn't about basketball, but it was about all these different things to really expand the minds of the kids. And in doing that, I realized that at this point I was starting to be about 5, 10, 15 years removed from the island, 20 years removed from the island, 25 years removed from the island. And my executive director, she's like, I don't know what to tell you this, but you're old. I was like, thank you. My knees couldn't tell me that, but all right. And she's like, well, you need to find a way to tell the story of where you came from and really the basketball story and why, and really try to connect with these kids about who you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to do. So Adonal Foyle came out of that to really connect first and foremost about the importance of basketball, but the struggles of basketball, and that anything that is of value, especially when you're dealing with young people, you have to demonstrate the adversity. So we always, I think, in sports, because especially professional sports, by the time you get to the NBA, everybody's so good, you don't see the struggle of the pathway to get there. So it's always like, well, now you have an NBA player, you have Steph Curry, but if you go back and look at the struggle, is that you want to be able to communicate with kids that being an NBA player, being a professor, being a doctor, all of it requires struggle and adversity. And really, what is important is the kind of traversing that terrain. And so I wanted to find a way to talk to kids about it's okay to play sports, it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, and also a way of saying, this is who I am.
You used to read like kerosene lamp against the wishes of your grandmother, and then started a foundation about that. Just tell us that story and what it led to.
So in the Caribbean, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have indoor plumbing, and everything that the way you find your way across the island is by either the moon or hopefully that one of the neighbors kept their kerosene lamp on, and you can find your way using that as a guide to find your way through the island, the dark island. So they most everybody went to bed between 6 and 7, everybody's in bed, and the island goes completely dark. And so the Kerosene Lamp Foundation was born out of this idea that if you can have a light in the darkness, you can help that kid get across the island. But my grandmother, as most grandmothers, candles was very expensive in the Caribbean, and so was kerosene. So the lamp has to go out, and if you want it, you wake up and you turn the lamp. So I wanted to read, and I couldn't see. So what I would do is that I would take the kerosene lamp and try to turn it down low, and then I would take like a towel and stuff it underneath the door so she couldn't see the glare of the light. So I could get some extra reading in, and she would discover me, and then the people would help to pay. But at least I got to finish like an extra hour of reading.
That's cool. I think now would be a good time if you want to.
Oh, okay.
Read something from your poetry book.
Oh boy, no pressure. Okay, so I think what I would do is let's read. I will read I read my retirement poem. I think that was. So I was trying to figure out. I was sitting in Orlando and trying to retire and struggling with my GM to actually retire. And the poetry was, I wanted to find a way to talk about how to say goodbye to basketball. And by the way, way before Kobe did this. I wanted to do it through a medium that I've really come to love over the years. I studied poetry under Peter Balakian at Colgate. And it was really a cool thing because I never thought of myself as a poet. And And I told him that one time, and he started laughing. And he was like, every poet has to start somewhere. And so when I was retiring, I thought there would be no fitting time than to write a poem about transition.
But these poems have spanned years,
Spanned
right?
years,
You've been
yeah.
writing them down and then put it together.
Exactly. So this is the one that I wrote right before I retired. It's called Love Song to a Game. How should I tell thee goodbye? What can you say about a love affair to rival that of Romeo and Juliet? This is not some melancholy ode to some hackneyed love of mortals. I found our love deep in the entrails of the Caribbean Sea, love that swept me to a land where our embrace became mythical. You showed me a world that few have dreamt of. Colgate's golden steeple, a sojourn where ancient teachings flooded my mind. There in Shenango Valley, where 13 sung my soul to flight, basketball laid siege to my soul. I do not cry for the passing of our love, for it stands radiant while my brittle bones crumble through swift time. I have known you by so many faces, I will spend my end of days recalling. You have infected many with the allure of riches and black gold, but I am not angry with you, my love. For to a boy who was lost in the bosom of nothing, you gave a hope and a home. Like the flickering of a light, you come and go without much fuss, so I leave you to fend off seekers, hoping they too will cherish your unyielding countenance. As for me, I will forever live in the glare of your loving embrace. From time to time, I hope you will look in at this pitiful fool. I will miss brothers of a quilt struggling with burning lights. If I offer advice, pierce beyond the glaring lights and see the faces beyond the wall. Do not be fooled by the magician's nimble fingers. For this is a life with mirrors and screens. Its only truth lies in the understanding that it will all end. The song I will take home is the symphony of thousands of screaming friends, warriors, magic, and yes, Memphis too. I sing in praise, hope, blessing, flowing from a boy, songs of thanks to you and all I knew. Please stay my immortal love.
Well, the two stayed back for the end. Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Wow. Let's talk about some social advocacy things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Democracy Matters was your first foray into this.
Yes.
Tell us about how that came about and what it is.
So Democracy Matters was really was born out of this idea. So I took a class at Colgate called, I think it was Philosophy and Religion. It was taught by Professor Coleman Brown. And Coleman Brown was an unbelievable activist all his life. He marched with Dr. King. He was a reverend, and so he was teaching this class called, I think it's Philosophy and Religion 200 or something it was. And we had a question. He posed a question in class one day. He said, "Is your generation apathetic?" And he just left that in the class, and everybody in the class, just started going at each other. It was, and he just let it hang there for a while, and we just started going to each other. Now that day of that class, I had a championship game at the Patriot League, and I had a tryout. We had a walkout, morning walkout to go over strategy for the game. It was a 12, and this conversation started in class. It went beyond the class. We were in the hallway. We went until about probably 1 o'clock, and of course I missed my shoot around, which is a whole other story that my coach was going to kill me for. But the conversation started in that philosophy and religion class. So then I became an NBA player about a year later, and I decided I wanted to figure out, now that I was in position of money and wealth, what was my moral obligation to my society. And I went back to that conversation over and over, and I made the mistake of, so the one thing you learn very quickly is that if you're living in a house with 3 college professors, never pose a question in which you don't want to have an answer. So I posed a question at dinner table one night, and like, I want to figure out what I can do to empower the next generation to find their voice. And I just thought, it's a really good thing, I just let it there, it sounds good, you know, everybody's impressed, and now I can go home. Well, the next day my parents showed up with 3 boxes of books and campaign finance reform. And they were like, and they had questions, by the way, that I had to answer to make sure I read through all of the books. So, in reading about the issue of money politics, I decided that that was going to be the basis of Democracy Matters. And the one prevailing thing that I find is that looking from politics from somebody who just became a new citizen to the United States is that why wasn't young people participating as much in the system? And that was a question that bothered me for a very long time. And what I find out is that our system is controlled more by money than by activism. And what people cared about was not to listen to the whims of young people, but instead to listen to people who can give them $500 or $1,000 for plate of dinner. So most young people were left out of the conversation. Most of the fight we've had is like whether or not a person at a university should be able to vote in that community. So we find ways to prevent those young people from voting rather than engage them to figure out what they believe about a whole lot of things. And we say things like, we hope that one day that they will inherit the world, but we're not giving them any opportunity to participate in a world that they hope to inherit one day. So part of how everything we do in this country, if you step back, it's not about Republican or Democrat. It's really about how much money is in the system and who is really controlling the person with regards to money. So that was kind of the idea. The challenge for us is to say we can talk to a Democrat, we can talk to independent, we can talk to a conservative, we can talk to a progressive. And the question is this issue prevailing? Is this issue the prevailing issue across our country? And we think that the answer is yes, and most so. This was 25 years ago, before Citizens United, where they unleashed the torrent of money into the system, and before super PACs and everything else. So that was a time when John McCain and McCain-Feingold had just passed McCain-Feingold. And now what we have is an unlimited amount of money in the system. So what we try to do instead is to say, we're about good governance. Like, how do you create a government that is responsive to the people and not to the 3 people who give them $1 million to run for office?
So that was in
2001.
And so you were playing.
Yeah.
And the audience was high school kids, college kids.
When I we started off at a college base. So we started at a college base, and then eventually we went back to high school. So what we tasked, the other thing that we believe is one of those things that happened in politics, that young people have never been taught how to organize politically. So if you think of it, if you came out of the civil rights movement, you came out of the anti-war movement, you came out of the women movement, there had been deliberate effort teaching people how to organize, right? And what we discover is that we had a lot of young people who didn't know how to have a conversation with somebody they didn't agree with. You know, how to initiate the conversation. So one of the challenges we had was to say, okay, so part of the Democracy Matters in its essence is to go and talk to someone on your campus that you have nothing in common with, and try to see if you can make a connection with them about how campaign finance reform will affect the cause that they believe in. So you have to make that case. And you're not trying to convince them to vote a particular way. What you're trying to convince them is to form alliance. Because if you care, if you believe in a women's rights issue, civil rights issue, gender issue, whatever the issue, the environment, is that all of it comes down to who gets elected and who is pulling the purse strings behind that politician, right? The politician given a choice between somebody who can give him $5 and somebody who can give him $50,000. Every single time, take $50,000 so he doesn't have to talk to 25 people to get that, to get $5 or $10 and stuff like that. So a politician will always take the easy way, and it goes right to left. So we wanted to say, like, what we needed to teach the kids to do, to figure out how to map the college terrain, and eventually once they got that, then to push them out into the local community to learn about the groups out there that are doing things that they care about, and eventually they will get to the national level. And so we made it almost like a second academic course, that it requires more than just knowing the issue, but be able to talk to people and be able to organize and be able to go out and build coalitions.
Very cool.
Well, thank you.
No, especially, because one of the points you make, not just in the book but since, is that, and this is a little bit controversial, not everybody believes it, is that you have an unusual, podium. You can, you're an athlete, people want to be around you and listen to you. And some people say, just play and shut up. And other people believe, as you do, and others, that you should use that to your advantage.
Yes, I do believe that. And I think part of it is that when you, coming from, I remember, I grew up in this island called Canada. So Canada in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is like, think of it as Hawaii. So St. Vincent is about 100,000 people. And Canada, the island that I grew up on, is about, at the time when I was growing up there, it's probably 600 people, And I remember scenes of my grandmother will go to the polls, and she would drag 2 or 3 neighbors to go to the polls with her. And we have a first past the post system. So literally an election could be won by 1 vote. So so when you talk about when there wasn't plurality of people, it was like 1 vote could determine an election. And my grandmother, people were just everybody in the island, it was in their best interest to understand that they had to vote. It didn't matter how they vote, but they had to vote. So if it involved getting a donkey, and we had donkeys at the time, and so you get a donkey to get an older person to the polls, you get a donkey and you carry them to the polls. You didn't know who were they going to vote for, but you had to make sure that they get to the polls. So that was the thing that was in my head when I first came here. So when I came to the United States, and everybody studied this is the most vibrant democracy of all time, so I was like, well, of course, we must have 98% of the people in this country voting. Because, we have a very large number. I'm on my island, we have 99% of the people voting. And it was imperative that they do so. But I think as you immerse yourself culturally, you understand a few things, is that there are a lot of impediments to people doing the things that should be easy. And I think that's been, for me, the understanding is more than just me being an athlete. I would like to think if I wasn't an athlete and just 6'10", that people will listen because I would go to them and engage them. And I think that was the most surprising thing for me as running a foundation, Democracy Matters, is that when you go to people, it's like, we have never heard from such and such. We've never heard from a politician. We don't know who a politician is because they never reach out to us, because they don't think we have money, so they never want to hear what we have to say as young people. So I heard that so many times. So I think for athletes, what I try to tell them is that you have a stage. Don't be afraid of the stage. The stage is you have earned through your work as an athlete, and there is a lot of responsibility in holding that stage. But what you can do is that when you do decide to take an issue, really take the time to study the issue. Take the time to master it, because you no longer just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for a community that is behind you, your team, your teammates, the community in which you find yourself. So it's important that, yes, it is your right to speak, but it's very important that you pay attention to what you say and be responsible to your words and to your deeds and that public stage, because it's a tremendous responsibility. And once you shatter that, it's very hard to regain it. So it's important that you take the time and do the due diligence that is required before you open up your mouth. And that is something that I think all of us will agree with.
So So what was the office you were going to run for in 2020?
I'll be undecided. I'll be cheering everybody on.
But on a tangential note, in the future, do you have any goal to coach at a high level?
So yes. I mean, I don't rule it out. For me, it was the first part of like my first iteration of my post-career life was really to ask some questions. Is that how could we prepare athletes to really burden the responsibility of being in the public eyes and the responsibility of transitioning properly. And so I've really been thinking a lot about beefing up. So if you think about almost every discipline, there is a tremendous amount of literature about how to become better. How, you know, there's self-help books about how to make yourself better. And I think in the realm of sports, there's not a lot of literature that we can build so that athletes can start looking to a pathway of saying, here's a path to follow, here's something that somebody else is. So I've been encouraging a lot of athletes to really write about their stories about, one of the books I'm working on right now is about transition, and really going around and asking track and field athletes, gymnastics, whatever, hockey, really talking about what are some of the elements of transition that help them. And how do you continue to fight that battle? How do you deal with the identity of being an athlete and then removing yourself from that? So there's a lot of challenges for athletes. So I wanted to focus on this space for a little bit to really try to create context for athletes to start thinking of themselves as no different than any other person in transition. But what is required is a robust amount of literature in that space and a lot of people writing about best practices. And so I wanted to be one of the people in that space. So that's been holding my interest so far.
Gotcha. Before we open it up to questions, did you want to read anything else, or? Okay,
let's see. So one of the cool, one of the poems that I did in this one is it was an exercise by Peter Blaken, I said one of my professor at Colgate. And this one was to take a Shakespearean sonnet and try to modernize it, but using all the elements of the sonnet. So the iambic pentameter and the couplet and stuff like that. So I decided to take it and add it to this thing called an island witch. So you'll hear, so an island witch, in the Caribbean, your grandparents tell you this thing about this thing called a sukuna when you're growing up. It's so that you turn the light off and go to bed. Is their way to keep order. So if you go outside, this sukuna is going to do terrible, unspeakable things to you. And if you didn't behave, this sukuna has some powers that can get into the house and do, make sure that you behave. So this poem was written, in a Shakespearean sonnet, but it's about a Caribbean witch. So it's called Island Witch. She claimed it comes like a thief in dead of night to suck your blood and leave you thin and dry. It screams and sighs until the break of light, the blazing fire cuts the ominous sky. It passes through the tiniest of cracks. A bolted door, a keyhole is no match. To stop it, one must find its hidden tracks. Its shedded skin will be the hunter's catch. With salt and pepper stain the hunter's prey. To burn and burn will be its deadly fate. And it must turn towards the morning ray. The zephyr pulls the sun unto the lake. The sukuna parades the tarry sky, as trembling in my childhood bed I lie.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So, who has a question?
You're probably 5 to 1% of being a college graduate in the MBA.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is that some of your teams now are composed of young men, even out of high school or maybe first year in college. And as you know, a lot of the American athletes have just baby from 8th grade on, and 6th grade. So how do you address, when you talk to the teams or to your audience about the value of education? Because you're very unique.
It's a great question, and I think that before I answer your question directly, I think we have to step back a little bit. I think that there's been a dereliction in duty from the university system. Because I think what you've had is that sports have become such a big business in college that what you have is that there have been a shifting away. Even if you take the best case scenario, so you go to a great school, name the institution, what they do now is that athlete is completely isolated in athletic domes. They have pathways that they go to the classroom. They have tutors teaching them 80% of the time. So the question that you have to ask yourself first and foremost is like, even if we assume that a young person stays 8 years in college, the question is the university doing what it needs to do to educate that person as is demanded, right? And I would say more and more when it comes to athletes, they've been very bad actors in this. So if you have an athlete and he's saying to them, one, you're not paying them, and you can have different arguments about that, but you're not educating them, no matter how long they spend in college. What is then the responsibility of that athlete? If the university as an institution has failed its responsibility by not educating but exploiting that athlete, then it's the athlete's responsibility then to figure out a way that they can both get an education but not be exploited. So I'll give you an example. If a university seriously was interested in education, if an athlete is out of the NBA, most of the teams in the NBA finish in April. I went back and finished my master's in the summer. Almost all institutions that I played for will ask you for money to continue and finish an education that you never completed, for the agreement that you started when I agreed to go there for 4 years, right? So it's very easy for them to say, for as long as you're an athlete that played in our system, you can come back here anytime and finish your degree anytime, night, day, as long as we have open spot available, you can do it. But they don't do it. So the institutions don't do it. So it's very hard for me as much as, and I agree with you 100%, going to your question, I believe that it is part of the responsibility of the athlete to become as educated as they can be. But that becomes particularly hard when a simple thing, for example, if you want an athlete to stay in college for 4 years, all you have to do is to pay the insurance to ensure that if that athlete breaks a limb, that they will get something. And because the moment that athlete gets hurt, the university will throw them off the system. They're no longer in scholarship. So they have to go back to where they come from. And where is that? Well, they don't have much resources there. So the difficulty, if I had my way, and I think that the university was fulfilling their obligation, and I would say, every athlete, if you can spend 4 years at a great institution, you should do it, no question. You should get as much education as you can, because it will be very beneficial to you when you get into the NBA. But then I'll be lying as well. Because the truth is that with the advance in technology, you can get a master's degrees or PhD degrees online. So it's like, so there's responsibility on both sides, but I don't want to get the university system off the hook, from the amount of debt has been caused by the concussion and the unwillingness to do the research that is necessary. I mean, an institution for higher learning that can literally go down into one of the offices and task a professor with finding out some of the issues that are happening to players and ensuring that they're healthy, are not doing that basic responsibilities. An institution that can really design a curriculum to empower the professional athlete, to ensure that they have the necessary training in marketing, the necessary training in history of sports, and really do a robust department. We have hundreds of different departments about almost anything. Professional sport is a multi-billion-dollar business in which there is tentacles where people can make a legitimate living in that business. And there's not a university system that is responding to that in a proactive way, where a guy could say, you know what, if I stay the extra 2 years in school, I might be able to get a degree that will help me as a professional athlete. So that's the disconnect for me. To me, is that there is certainly blame on both sides, but the adult in the room is not acting like the adult, and the university is the adult, and they're not acting like their institution of higher learning. They're acting like they're a business that is much more interested in the bottom line and the basketball, football field than they care about the quality of education they give to an athlete. So why would I tell an athlete in that circumstances they should stay there?
Now, since you got your career for that, what players did you least want to see?
Oh, well, I mean, that's a tricky question, right? Because I remember when I remember playing and nobody could guard Shaq. He was big, he was fast, and he hurt people. At least little people like me. But, you know, I remember telling PJ one time, I was like, well, I mean, he's gonna beat everybody up anyway, so I'm on the bench and I have 6 fouls. Let me go use the 6 fouls, you know, and that's how I got my first starting position. So I'm like, I mean, he literally beat me up and threw me all over the floor, but I got to start after that for at least a month because, so it's, you know, it's like, I think as an athlete, you really shine among when you come up against the best players because you have none to lose. I mean, I can't guard Shaq. I can't guard Akeem. But if I get them from 50 points to 40, that's a blessing. So you have to redefine your goals a little bit. But no, I think it's like, I think the truth is, I really do believe that you try to do the best you can against the best. And at the end of the day, as an athlete, that's all you can do. Yes?
Do you think God should be able to go to the league outside of high school?
Say again?
Do you think players should be able to go directly to the league after high school?
Yes. So here's one of the things, and I was talking with this earlier, but let me expand a little bit about this. So, and I guess maybe this is because I come from a developing country in a way, right? Is that in almost every developed country, college is not linear. So the United States is one of the few countries that says you go from high school to college, right? Most people in the developed world cannot afford to go to college. So if you're not getting a scholarship, you have to work and figure out what areas you want to be involved in for the rest of your life before your parents, who is literally going to go bankrupt to send you to school, to get a liberal arts education. Now, I happen to love a liberal arts education, but to go to tell my mother in the Caribbean that she has to literally forfeit everything she has for me to figure out a liberal arts education for 4 years and then maybe I'll specialize in year 5. You can't do that. So the reason I say that is that I think that's important to know, right? So most of the people I grew up with, they have to save money, they have to work on their own, and they have to figure out exactly what area they want to specialize in. And college is about surgically getting to that thing, right? There's no leeway to kind of figure it out. You have to, like, you want to be a doctor, you got to figure out a way to get there. You want to be a lawyer, you have to figure out a way to get there. You have to work for it. So if everybody in the family, for example, is working to send that one person to school, everybody in the family, an extended family, and that may take 3 or 4 years before you can actually get enough monies to scrunch up to get that person to go to school. So college has never been in my life linear. And most of the time on my island, there were 2 people on the entire island who had a chance to go to college. Because that was a luxury that was not afforded to anybody unless you really had a committed community willing to work to send you to college. And everybody will put in to try to get that one kid out, to go to college, and that kid is going to represent that entire family and beyond. And the hope is that kid would then pull the next kid up. But most people that I grew up with sacrifice everything to just send that one person to college. Okay, so that's that. Now, to your point is that almost every sport is, the life expectancy of a professional basketball player is 4.7 years. It doesn't matter what you do in professional football. In football, it's 2.7. In baseball, it's probably maybe 5 or 6 years, right? So you are becoming an expert in a profession that you will probably only spend 4 years or 5 years doing, right? So to me, is that it's very hard to say that the greatest tennis player in the world should go to college, right? Because you will literally have the rest of your life to do it. The question becomes how we define college. I just finished my PhD, my master's, my MBA, my second master's, what am I, 40-something? It took a little bit longer, right? But it's like my path is a little bit different. I don't see higher learning as this linear thing. I think you have to figure out what you want. I think there's a different ways of doing it. Do I want more guys to do I think it's beneficial for more guys to go to college? 100%, I agree with you. If you can spend 4 years at Duke and get a great quality education at Colgate, then yes. But if you feel like you're not getting that quality education, you might learn more by traveling the world and learning from the veterans in an organization and some of the people you can hire. Like I tell people all the time, as a professional athlete, you make enough money. If you really want a great education, you can hire 3 PhD professors from any university in the system and pay them $600,000 a year and just have them for your own benefit to teach you for the entire time you're in the NBA. Right? Because if you truly really wanted an education, I'm saying that there's a lot more different paths you can take to get there. So I feel very uncomfortable saying, well, should a player be able to go from high school to the NBA? The answer is yeah, if they could play, they would go, and if they can't play, they will be out of the league in a year. Right? And that's the whole thing about professional sports. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how tall you are, it doesn't matter how you look. If you can play, you stay. If you can't, you go. It's a really, really cutthroat business. Because nobody's going to be like, well, I kind of like you, I'm going to give you $10 million. It's either you can do something or you can't, right? So you may go to the NBA, for example, right out of high school, but it might be 2 years before you back trying to figure out what you're doing, and you may still have the chance to go back to college in that 2 years. So it happens quickly. So I'm very reluctant to say that, as a player, I'm going to stand in the way of that. I just would like them to know more of the challenges that is ahead of them. You're playing with grown men. You're on your own. You're traveling every day for 8 months. You're getting into city at 3 in the morning. Everybody wants something from you. I can tell you the dangers that are there. But if I'm being honest, I don't care how old you are. Being an NBA player is something that you cannot practice for until you become an NBA player. And almost any player who's honest will tell you that.
Do you think the role is made in this NBA mostly black players versus others?
Say again?
Do you think the role was put in place to use the NBA mostly black players?
No, I think that I'll be a little bit more nuanced than that, okay? So I think the NBA is, I was fortunate enough to work in the union side of things. I was in the executive board. And so here's the deal. If you come into the league at a certain age, it takes a certain amount of time before now in the system, before you become a restricted agent where you make a set period amount of money to where you can make a lot of money, right? I think part of what always happens in our business is that they try to figure out how to minimize the impact. So if you're a team, you don't want to give a player 6 times the hit max. I think it's purely more economical than that. So if you can limit the player time when he gets into the league, you can limit how much money he makes at the top end. You could, because remember what I said, go back to basics, right? It's 4 years, right? So literally right now, we have a player on a rookie scale from year 1 to year 4. So they're going to have what? 1 or 2 bite at the apple at that max contract? So if you can control that, so I think that's one side of it. The other side of it is that there is no doubt that the NCAA likes what they're doing and they want to keep that viable business thing. So I'm sure they will call the NBA and say, hey, it'd be very nice if you continue to not let these guys come out early because it's in their best interest for them to go to college and make more money. So I think there's a purely lobbying system there as well. I'm not going to pretend, and I'm not going to pretend also that there may not be a racial element to it. But I'm not sure we have done enough work yet to really say that it's definitively racial or because they're black players. I will say instead that there's a lot of reasons that I have seen, and I'm sure that the people who are making decisions have their own reasons, but I'm not privy to that yet. And I'm not being evasive when I said that. Yeah.
When you describe where you're from and how the community will come together to send one child to college, everyone will put in, that sounds really nice. I mean, and I'm just wondering, but then when you say you have to read that person, that sounds so good. So I'm just wondering, because you're such a wonderful person, we watch you on TV, my daughter. What do you think you brought from your background that has made you how you are?
Well, I think the first thing, I was raised by my grandmother and my aunt, and they were tough. So my grandmother would, one of the things that, growing up, I didn't realize how poor we were. So my grandmother would cook like a big pot of food, and literally she will feed the entire village before I get some of that good stuff. And I would be so angry at her, and because she would give away all the meat and all the good stuff, would go to the neighbors first, and then eventually I get the leftovers, which was never enough in my opinion. And I would be so upset. And she said, she would say something like, "You never know, tomorrow they're going to be feeding us." And as for a young person, you're like, right, but it's like, those stories for me has been the things that have been part of my life. She would say, be humble. Doesn't matter what your station in life is, you treat people as you want to be treated. She will say, there is always somebody much bigger and more powerful than you. So all these lessons, I think, over my life, they became part of really who I became, who I am today. It was shaped very much by the experiences of the people that raised me. And I think the most important lesson I think above all is that really take the time to get to know people. One of the coolest things about the Caribbean is that if you go to the Caribbean and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" It's like people always just stop and they expect a conversation, right? And it's like you get to know people. And the first time I came to the United States, I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And like people just walk by and I'm like, they're not stopping. They don't want to know. So for me, I think a lot of those things are, I think is very experiential in terms of how I was raised. And I think part of it is that I see the landscape coming from the outside. I didn't get in an elevator until I was 16. I've been in a class at 15 that was over 3,000, which was almost 10 times the population of my island, my first time in Philadelphia. I've never seen snow, but it's like I learned so much when I first came here to the United States about what I wanted to be. I remember the first time a kid asked me for autograph. I didn't know what it meant, and I started laughing. And I'm like, "You want me to sign a piece of paper?" And I started laughing, and I ran away from this kid. And my stepdad, he grabbed me and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "The kid wanted me to write on a piece of paper. Isn't that weird?" And he's like, "No, that's an autograph." I'm like, "But why would somebody want another person's name on a piece of paper?" And he was so confused, and it took him like literally like 20 minutes to explain, "It's a cool thing." I'm like, "What's cool about it though?" Anyway, but I mean, that's been my experience, and I think in many ways my parents allow me to really struggle through that. They didn't try to just drag me through it. They let me kind of experience it in a visceral way, and I think it became part of like understanding what it means to come through a culture, walk my way through that culture, and then find my truth in that culture. And I think I've been able to bring who I am. Hopefully, my grandmother will illustrate to you better. A part of what she has taught me, to inform my life.
Well, thank you for sharing your part of your little life today. Your life today, and some of the stuff you're doing and what you've done, and it's just been very fascinating to me and a great honor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
There are books to be had out in the lobby.
With autograph?
Yeah, this is the new Mevo system. So it's a Mevo, and it's great. Audio, video, you can zoom in, and it's all. That's it.
Okay, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And then you control it from your phone?
Correct. And then you can upload it right to a platform. You can do YouTube if you want, but we do Vimeo, which is nice. And what's also nice is that Donald, being as studious, will go home and watch the tape.
Okay.
And write notes, so I'll go through all the notepads tomorrow. But yeah, fun toy.
And you work with Adonal?
I'm his manager.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what'd you guys think?
I thought it was great.
Interesting guy, huh?
Yeah, I had no idea all the different dimensions.
Yeah. Well, very unique. And he lives here in Orinda.
Oh, I
So
didn't know
if
that.
you ever see him, he's usually a chow
was
on Fridays.
Yeah.
Go up and tell him hello.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming out tonight. This is really nice. We're so glad that they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you.
Not a problem. Have a good night.
Thanks for your help.